Welcome back. We are recording episode number 3. I held up 2 fingers, but I mean 3.
That's 3.
Yes. Recording episode number 3 today. Today I am taking the reins from Paige. So, thank you to everyone that's listened to the first episode.
So exciting.
It's so exciting. Let's just dive right in.
Awesome.
So, last time Paige talked about a murder. So today we're going to be doing something a little more fun. Not that a murder's not fun, but anyway, so we're doing something a little bit more lighthearted today, and I'm so excited to finally share with you. So, let me get my
I'm
phone.
excited because I don't actually know what this is. I kind of know a little bit of what it is, but I don't know exactly. So I'll be joining this ride with you all. So it's really exciting.
Alrighty, so I'm going to take you back to September 19th, 1961. Betty and Barney Hill drove down an empty and winding country road in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, heading back home from a trip from Montreal, when they see a strange light that seemed to be following them. When they pulled over to investigate, they saw a spacecraft with gray human-like beings, aka the Greys, behind its windows. Without explanation, loud rhythmic beeps sounded from the car's trunk. The couple felt instantly drowsy and lost consciousness.
So the sound came from their trunk? Their car's trunk?
It sounded like it was coming from the trunk, but apparently it was like a bouncing sound. Like a sound was like bouncing off of the trunk. They came to around 2 hours later and 35 miles down the road. When they finally got home to Portsmouth, New Hampshire at dawn, they didn't feel any better. They felt like dirty. Their watches stopped working. Barney's shoes were strangely scuffed, and Betty's dress was ripped and had a pink powdery substance all over it. Neither of them could remember what happened in those 2 hours. So what happened?
I don't know what.
Okay, so now that you have the gist, let's do a little backstory on Betty and Barney Hill. I kind of wanted to just lay it out for you, novel style. Is that the word? Whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay,
Nope.
So they had both actually been previously married. Betty got married early, and there's one book that her niece actually wrote about their experience. She said that, quote, Betty was like, oh, well, back in those days, you either went to school or you got married. So I got married. So kind of funny. I won't go too terribly into their married life beforehand, but both had previously been married and they started seeing each other. They never really planned on anything being romantic between them, but the more time they spent together, the more they were like, hey, I love you. So they decided to start a relationship, and eventually they did get married.
Do you know how old they were when they got married and met and got married?
I do not, actually. I couldn't find anything, unfortunately, that said that. I'm sure there are more sources out there, but I could not get my hands on those sources. And as I told you, the documentary that I bought, the audio didn't work, and I don't understand why. Okay, so they actually, when they first got married, they spent some time away from each other because Barney had children from his previous marriage, and he didn't really want to move away from his kids. He lived in Philadelphia, and then Betty was living in New Hampshire, going to the University of New Hampshire. So she was going.
So that's when she decided to go to school.
Yes. Yes. She got married. It was like a whole thing. She actually got a pretty good influx of cash because she had sold her house from when she was married to like an oil company or something. So they gave her like good money. So she was like, yeah, because she had apparently started her degree and then got married. There was like some things with his kids. Again, I won't really go into it because it was kind of a lot. They got divorced. Again, it was a big thing. So she apparently was going to school right before, because they weren't her kids. They were his kids.
Oh.
So right before he was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I have children." And she was like, "Okay." He didn't tell her.
Before they
So
got married, he didn't
yep.
tell her that they had kids?
Uh-huh. So
I
then
feel like
she
that's a big thing you need to mention.
oh, yeah. So she legally adopted his children and ended up withdrawing from school.
Okay.
Yeah, so then she became like a housewife
Oh,
and
wait,
took care of his
Barney?
kids.
Are
No,
you
no,
talking
no.
about
No, her previous husband,
Okay.
which is why I didn't even wanna get into it.
Wow, that's confusing.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot. So, anyway, I felt a little overwhelmed just reading about it. I'm like, "Wow, this is really dramatic." So, again, Betty was living in New Hampshire in her house in Portsmouth, and Barney was living in Philadelphia at the time when they first got married, but he was like, "You know what? I wanna be with my wife." So he ended up moving to New Hampshire. He actually worked at a night shift at the post office. He was a postal worker, and he actually transferred post offices. I don't exactly know how it works, but he transferred up to where Betty was, and the closest place that he could get a job was like 60 miles away. So despite
Wow.
yeah,
From
despite
where
the
she lived?
mhm,
Ooh.
yeah, so despite the long drive, um, he was like, "You know what? Whatever, as long as I get to be with my wife," which is really
That's
sweet,
sweet.
honestly. So he was also a World War II veteran. He fought in, the war, and he served for several years in the Army. An accident with a grenade caused Barney to lose all his teeth, and
Ooh.
he had dentures, and then he was honorably discharged because of that. This will, come back later too, by the way.
Mm. I don't like that.
Yes. So, while Barney's job was kinda difficult, Betty's job had difficulties too. She was a social worker handling child welfare cases.
Ooh, not a fun thing to do.
Yes. So, fun fact, they were actually a biracial couple. Betty was white and Barney was black, which is awesome to think about in 1961.
Yeah, that was unheard of.
Oh, yeah. So, with their little free time, they were devoted to their church and the civil rights movement. Barney was very much in that, and Betty too. They were known. They got Barney got some awards even for from like the Civil Rights Commission.
Wow.
So he was really important. They were very involved with the children in their family. So cuz Barney's wife or ex-wife now still lived in Philadelphia with his boys. So he didn't get to really see them all the time.
Mm. Were
And
they young?
I'm not exactly sure how old they were during this time. It doesn't I couldn't really find a source, but
Still, his kids were in
yeah,
Philadelphia, so he
they
didn't
were
get to see him.
yeah, they were still children, I believe. Because he missed his kids so much, they were very involved with their family, and Barney was involved, like, in the Boy Scouts of America with, like, the family kids, and
Very sweet couple then, it
yeah,
sounds like. Very
uh,
awesome.
very sweet. Betty's niece, she wrote a book called, Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill story, and actually in the book, her name is, Kathleen something. I think I have it down farther in my notes, but I don't wanna go look right now. She actually wrote in her book that Barney missed his kids in Philly and was always happiest when they came up to visit.
Aw.
Yeah, so really sweet couple, also really credible couple. Keep that in
Right.
mind. They were, by all accounts, mentally stable. They were good people. They were active people. So, after having been married 16 months, they took a spontaneous trip to Montreal and Niagara Falls. They left so impulsively, they had no time to go to the bank before it closed for the weekend and got in their car with less than $70 in their pockets. Which,
Oh, man.
yeah, I was like, whew,
That
that's,
makes me anxious.
I know, I know.
Oh.
They saw the trip as their like delayed honeymoon,
Aw.
which I thought was precious. On the last night of their 3-day trip, September 19th, the day of the abduction, they were a little tired, so they stopped at a diner in Vermont to get some coffee to, recharge a little bit before driving back. Barney wanted to push through and beat the wind and rains from an approaching hurricane. So they left the diner around 10 p.m. and they estimated that they would arrive at their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire between about 2 and 3 a.m. at the latest. So they started driving away from the diner. As they drove, they saw a strange light. At first, they thought it may have been a falling star, maybe a satellite, maybe a plane. They didn't know, but it grew larger and brighter with each mile that they drove. And they started noticing that it was kind of following them in a
So
weird way.
were they seeing it out of the front, the back? Where were they seeing it?
Not necessarily the front, but it was kind of all over the place. Uh, it seemed to move with the car and it would duck past like the moon and behind trees and mountains and like reappear like moments later. Like so it was kind of all over the place.
Ominous.
It was like they described it as like a cat and mouse kind of game that they
Don't
were
like
playing.
that.
Yeah, don't like that at all. So they ended up pulling over at road stops and picnic turnouts to get a better look with their binoculars. And through that, Betty saw that the light was an object spinning in the air. And she's even quoted saying, "Barney, if you think that's a satellite or a star, you're being completely ridiculous." So
sounds like me.
Yes. So, okay, the book that was written by their niece captured the Betty and Barney Hill experience written by their niece, Kathleen Marden. According to her, Barney would have never given like the quote, like flying saucers a second thought. He was incredibly intelligent and actually had an IQ of 140.
All right.
Yes, he was
right up there with me.
Yeah, we're really contributing members of society here.
So intelligent.
But so as they were driving along, they would get back in their car and they would keep going. Barney was becoming very concerned, but he didn't want to worry Betty. Because he was like, is it toying with us? Like he was getting a little paranoid, little nervous. So about 70 miles outside of the diner that they had left at 10, the light hovered just above the treetops, approximately, but who knows, really, about 100 feet above them. Of course, we know as humans, we have a really poor judgment of distance and length.
Right.
Yes. So Barney stopped the car. He kept it running. He apparently had a handgun under his car seat, which for an interracial couple at that time, that's not exactly the worst thing to have in your car.
Right.
Let's face it. So he had a handgun that was under his seat and he got it out and put it in his pocket and like ran into a dark field that was next to the road with binoculars to look at it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, he's got way more balls than I do because I would never fricking do that. There's absolutely no way. In fact, I would be speeding even faster or just drive off the mountain completely into
the abyss.
If there was a body of water around, you best bet I'm going to be driving into it to drown to get away from the aliens. So he looked through the binoculars and what he saw was like as big as a jet, but it was round and flat like a pancake is how he described it. So it was basically like a big round craft. And he said it had like windows all around it, kind of like that classic UFO kind of look.
The stereotypical UFO style.
Right. So he remembers thinking like, oh my God, what the hell is this? So behind the windows, through his binoculars, he could see gray uniformed beings that seemed to be looking right at him. So again, we're back to the grays.
Okay. My first thought about this is not, oh, weird, UFO, aliens. My first thought is those are some damn good binoculars.
Strong binoculars. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, damn, they have to be like quality.
That's almost like military grade type.
Well, he was in the
military. Maybe he brought those home from the army. Those are,
I mean, maybe.
That's crazy. Okay, so they were in uniform too?
They were like, in
uniform.
Uniforms. You know, again, the classic alien uniform. It's like a jumpsuit. You know, that's what I'm imagining in my head. They said uniformed, but
I'm picturing like
they're
a janitor's jumpsuit with
like
a name tag.
like Mr. Bronca from Bob's Burgers.
Yes. Except a little grayer.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I imagine too. And they never actually say what the uniforms look like. I'm sure they did somewhere, but I couldn't find it because I did try and get their book captured. I tried to get that book, but there was a problem with the Kindle download and it wouldn't let me have it. It only let me have a preview. So
Lame.
I read like the first 3 pages.
So you got so much information from
Yeah,
it.
so I got more backstory on Betty and Barney than anything else.
Yeah.
Not much about the capture. So what I did find, he tried to lift his hand to his pistol, but it was like he was frozen. And this is coming from Barney.
Oh, really,
So,
really don't like that.
Yeah, so he couldn't move.
Mm.
And then he starts freaking out.
As you would.
So he was like, oh my gosh, we're about to be captured. So then he like, of course, as you would think. So he starts yelling and he's like running back to the car and he's like, oh, like yelling to Betty, like, they're gonna get us, you know.
Run.
So she had her head actually craned out of the car window looking at them. They suddenly heard a series of weird buzzing sounds that seemed to be bouncing off the trunk of their car.
Mm.
They felt a weird tingling sensation through their bodies and then passed out.
Ooh.
Yes.
So he was actually not in the car at this point in time.
He was out of the car.
Okay.
There are a few sources that say that he had ran back to the car and gotten in it. And then some said that he was still outside of the car. So, but he was at least in close proximity to their vehicle.
Okay.
Yes. So now they've woke up. They're back home. It's hours later. It's dawn when they get home.
Oh.
Yes. So that much time had passed. So what should have gotten them home at 2 to 3 a.m., they got home at like 5 or 6, I think. I didn't know the exact time, but when they did wake up, it was 2 hours later and they were 35 miles down the road. I did read somewhere that they had apparently, through this 2-hour period that they can't recall, according to, I think, a few sources that I found, and don't ask me to quote the sources because I don't remember, it said that they had actually passed where they meant to had turned. So they had to actually like turn around and backtrack a ways to get back to that turn, supposedly. So I don't know how true it is.
So where were they exactly when he actually stopped and they blacked out?
They were just somewhere along the White Mountains. It said that they were like approximately 70 miles outside of the diner in Vermont, somewhere in the White Mountains.
Okay, so they were in Vermont at that point in time.
Yes. So the White Mountains are in New Hampshire. Do I know where that is? No. Did I look up where that was? Also, no. They're just in mountains. Yeah. So they're back home now. They're trying to make sense of the night, and they only had foggy memories even before they passed out. So they kind of could barely remember right beforehand what happened. All that they knew is they kept seeing a light and it got close to them. So that's pretty much all that they could remember. Barney felt like he had to examine like the lower half of his body, and he like looked around it. Betty's dress was torn in several places and it was covered in a pink powdery substance. Of course, there were shiny hoods. Yeah, there were shiny spots on the hood of their trunk that were magnetic. How they discovered this is they used a compass. And when they brought the compass closer to the spots, I think I did see a picture, and I'll look to see if I can find the picture again. The circles on their trunk kind of looked like a picture of like the moon changing phases. Does that make any sense?
Oh,
Yeah.
weird. Yeah,
That's what it
weird.
looked like to me.
So, or were they different colors of what their car was?
I think they were just
Or they were
burned, like burn marks, I think.
ew.
Yes. So they used a compass and they actually put it like next to the marks. And supposedly the compass would start like turning and going a little crazy, as you would if you were around a magnetic source where a compass wouldn't work.
Right. I'm just not sure that that would have been my first thought to do if I saw burn marks on my
Well,
trunk.
because of this happening, Betty was kind of like, okay, something did happen to us and
Right.
I'm not sure what it was. So they were like, they knew something weird had happened. So because of that, she reported the sighting to Pease Air Force Base, which was, I think, near there somewhere, because she was worried about the close proximity the car had with the light or spacecraft or whatever it was.
Mhm.
She was actually worried about like contamination, like radiation or whatever, because when she actually
Mhm.
got home, she had hung her dress out on the clothesline because she didn't want it in the house because it
Right.
had that.
Well, I mean, it was
Yeah, it was
ripped
ripped.
and it had some type of weird
Yes.
substance on it. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to touch that
And
either.
so she did notice that when she eventually brought it back into the house that the wind had blown off some of the pink substance.
Oh,
Yes. So there was still some on there, but a lot of it had been blown off by the wind.
okay.
So she reported it because she was actually sincerely worried that they had been contaminated. Because
Oh, yeah.
I mean any kind of claim to be abducted by aliens before that, everybody was, because this is the 60s. The 60s were a big era for alien abductions. 70s
Yeah.
as well. Of course, the
Mhm.
70s was just a crazy time full of serial killers and just weird shit. So,
Those couple decades
oh
were
yeah, they
rough.
were. So they were worried about contamination. They were interviewed by a Major Paul W. Henderson. He kind of brushed them off, saying that they misidentified the planet Jupiter, that it was an optical condition, and the event was labeled as insufficient data.
Jupiter?
I Yeah. I'm like, as now,
I
don't get me
mean,
wrong, I'm no scientist. I don't work at NASA or anything, but I don't think Jupiter moves with cars.
I don't think it does either. Now, I know that some things might seem like they're moving simply because, the moon stays in one
Yeah, it
place,
was
basically,
an
type of thing.
optical
I know
illusion, yeah.
that, but I don't know. That doesn't sound like a
Yeah,
planet.
um, I just think I think that calling it like, "Oh, it's planet Jupiter," because Major Paul W. Henderson, I don't I believe he was a part of Project Blue Book, which that would be an episode all in itself. Project Blue Book was actually a government project that
With a blue
right, they had a
book?
blue book and they wrote
Maybe.
stuff in it, but they investigated UFO sightings and abductions and stuff like that. So a lot of the
Mm,
famous cases such as this one was updated by people involved in Project Blue Book. So that could be an episode all in itself. That's a whole other thing. But I think he was a part of that, and this case was brought up in that program, and they also, I think, along with they were like, oh no, it was Jupiter. They don't know what they're talking about. So yeah,
huh.
that's a whole other thing. So in the weeks and months after, Betty, who was an avid reader, she checked out books from the library, and she discovered the group NICAP, which is National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. It's a private, it's not a government ran organization. It's a private organization by people who, there's like astrophysicists in it. There's like tons of scientists,
Oh,
people that claim that they've been abducted by aliens, people that claim that they've seen aliens, all that stuff. So it's a legit thing. About a month after they contacted, excuse me, about a month after they were initially abducted, they contacted Walter N. Webb, a Boston astronomer, and NICAP member. So NICAP has got legit people in it. They told him that they thought they developed a sort of mental block, and he believed them to be telling the truth. Because I guess Barney actually like confided in him, was like, I think there's something that happened, but I just can't remember what happened.
Right.
So 3 years has gone by. After the incident, they tried to forget the whole thing. They tried to forget that it even happened. But Betty was suffering from really disturbing dreams, and Barney especially was affected by it. He developed a bleeding ulcer.
Oh.
Yeah, he had horrible anxiety and high blood pressure, and even had to take a leave of absence from work because of how poor his health was doing. So, because of all that, they decided enough was enough and they sought mental help. So the couple met with a Benjamin Simon. He was a psychiatrist and neurologist who specialized in hypnosis, which was a mainstream technique at the time. Of course, now people say that there's a lot of problems with hypnosis, but this was like the thing to go to at the time for
kind of like the lie detector test.
pretty much anything. So through months, they would meet with Dr. Simon for about 1 to 2 times a week. So through weekly sessions, Dr. Simon helped the two of them piece together what they think happened, and he hypnotized them separately. So the first thing Barney remembered, intense music. No. The first thing Barney remembered was what happened after he initially saw the craft through his binoculars. So under hypnosis, he explained that when he saw one of the beings through the binoculars, he heard a voice in his head that told him not to move and to stay where he was. Yes.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
Okay, so anytime that someone explains that they've had an abduction story, it's always usually the same thing. They communicate with the alien through telepathy.
Right.
So nothing's ever actually said, but they can communicate with them like that. So I have a recording of Barney's interview under hypnosis.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes, I'm going to add it in post, but for you, I'm just going to play what I recorded off of my phone.
Okay.
I also have a little bit of Betty's interview. Despite their claims being real or not, I'm just saying this as a side. This interview with Barney especially, he has like true terror in his voice. So whether you believe it or not, in this moment, he was distraught.
Well, and it's one of those things where regardless of whether it happened or not, they believed that it happened, and it's terrifying.
It's terrifying to them, yes. So before I play the thing, he said that once that happened, there were suddenly men in the road, and they took them up a ramp onto the craft.
That's a big ass ramp.
Yeah, so I think it actually got closer to them, or maybe I don't know. It doesn't say.
It could be a big ramp.
I guess there's like artist recreations of it to show like, oh, what it may have looked like, you know.
Right.
But who knows? We don't know. They could have beamed him up like Scotty on Star Trek, and they thought it was a ramp. Who freaking knows? I don't know. I wasn't there. So here is a little bit of Barney's interview.
This creature, this leader is telling me something. He's telling me something. How's he getting it to you? I can see it in his face. Do you see his lips move? Yes. No, his lips aren't moving. Yes, go on. He's telling you. And he's looking at me. What did he tell you? Stay there. You keep looking. Just keep looking and stay there. And just keep looking. Just keep looking. Could you hear him? Oh, I gotta pull these binoculars away from my eyes. Because if I don't, I'll just keep staying there. Did you hear him tell you this? Oh, no, he didn't say it. You felt he said it. I know. You know he said it. There, yeah. Just stay there, he's saying to me. Yes, all right. I'll take you by hand. Just all right. Pull the binoculars away. God, give me strength. All right. Pull him down. Pull him down. Yes, God. It says, my God, give me strength. I gotta get away. Oh. Hey, all right. We gotta get away from him. All right. Calm down. I'm trying. I gotta get away. I think you'll be sure he was telling you this. Calm down. You're still asleep. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
he
he
sounds terrified.
Yes. So he's describing what he saw through the binoculars and what happened directly afterward. So what he said was he had the binoculars up on his face, and when he heard the voice in his head, I do apologize, the quality is poor, but of course it was the 60s.
Right.
And it was on a tape. So the other person talking in the recording is Dr. Simon. He's asking him the questions and everything. So he's saying that when he had the binoculars up on his face and he heard the voice, he couldn't put the binoculars down, is what he was saying. Like he tried to move and then he couldn't, and then he was freaking out. You heard him crying for Betty. Like, we got to get out of here. And there's, in the documentary that I watched about this, where it had these recordings, it said, like, of course I watch everything with subtitles, but it was like inaudible, da, 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 da. But I heard him say, if there's a God, give me strength.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, that kind of rips my heart. Yeah. So there's that's a little bit of Barney's. So once on the ship, this is according to Barney, they were separated and put in different rooms, then was told to lie down on these small, like, rectangular exam tables. So with both of them, this is Betty claiming this as well, they checked their eyes, ears, nose, and throat. They took samples of their hair, fingernails, and scraped their skin. According to Betty's interview, when they laid her on the table, what she called the leader, who kind of seemed to be running things, brought out a giant needle where sources said it was like 4 to 6 inches long, which again, yeah. But again,
we don't like that at all.
Yeah. But again, we don't know exactly how long it was. We'll just take that with a grain of salt. He brought it out and apparently was trying to insert it into Betty's navel, which that makes me cringe.
Oh.
She apparently was like, no, please don't do that. Don't do it. Please don't do that. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be painful. She said that he apparently injected it into her navel. It was incredibly painful, she said, but the quote unquote leader apparently waved his hand and the pain suddenly stopped.
Oh, I don't like that even more.
Yes. To have that in your body with no pain, that seems almost worse. Yeah.
No.
So apparently through telepathy, he told her it was a pregnancy test. I don't know.
Not how you do those, sir.
Yeah, so that it seems a little bit weird. But now I have a little bit of Betty's interview. And again, I will add this in after post. It is, again, a little poorly recorded, but here it is.
And the examiner has a long needle in his hand. And I see the needle. And it's bigger than any needle I've ever seen. And I asked him what he's going to do with it. And he said, just a simple test to help me. And I asked him what. And he said he just wants to put it in my navel. It's just a simple test. I told him, no, it will hurt. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he said, no, it won't hurt.
So, what Betty says in her interview is she's talking about the needle. She said it was the biggest needle I have ever seen. And did you notice the inflection in her voice when she was like, he said he was going to put it in my navel? Like she's crying. She's crying during this. So, yeah. After her examination, again, this is according to Betty, the beings rushed back into her room because they seemed excited. And again, she could hear them telepathically. They were excited about being able to take out Barney's teeth. And
because he had false teeth.
So Betty laughed and she was like, hey, no, those aren't his teeth. Those are dentures. And apparently they didn't understand.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's such a weird little, if this isn't true, I'm like, that's such a weird little thing to add.
Yeah.
You know? So one of the most scrutinized and controversial parts of their stories was Betty's claim that one of the aliens showed her a map of stars that, after being very studied, actually lended credibility to their story. There's also a little thing that said that one of them gave her a book, but then they were like, had a disagreement, and they're like, no, you can't take the book. I don't know. That was from like one or two sources.
That was that guy's like, first day on the job. He thought she could take it home, and the boss was like, dude, no.
Yeah, they were like, no, she can't take anything.
That stays here.
Right. So Betty drew out the map of stars to Dr. Simon and Marjorie Fish, who is a member of Mensa, which I kind of knew what Mensa was, but I also didn't know what Mensa was. So basically, Mensa is like a round table society kind of thing. And it is where color, creed, this is what I found as like an explanation, where race, color, creed, national origin, age, politics, educational or social background are irrelevant. Mensa is a not-for-profit organization that has no opinions and takes no stands on any political, religious, or social issues. It's basically all about like science and intelligence, and it's for super smart people.
So something I would not be able to get into.
Yeah, shorthand, we're not allowed in.
Mm-mm.
They're not accepting our applications at all.
They are
not. They don't even read them. So
no, they're like, that's funny. Let's throw it away.
Right. They're like, who are these fucking people? So anyway, I don't exactly know what she did. If someone knows, please let us know, because I didn't look that far into it. So Marjorie decided to build 3-dimensional models of our galactic neighborhood, I guess. So little, like, I guess galaxies outside of ours, and just like pinpointing where certain stars are, that sort of thing. So she built 20 of these different models, and I saw a picture of it, and I'll add it. I have a lot of pictures to collect again. So she built about 20 different ones and found a particular pattern where several points had matched what Betty had drawn. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of this because it's something that they claim to have told Betty where they're from. So the base stars were Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli, which is a constellation of Reticula. So I don't exactly know where this is in the universe. I'm not a science guy. But this is actually legit research. Like, this particular bit of information, like, it's actual stars. It's been like magazines and scientific papers, all that kind of stuff. Because apparently, again, I heard and I saw in another source that they claimed that they were from Zeta Reticuli. I don't know if that's true. That's just something that I read. So in 1965, which is now 4 years after the abduction, the Hill story was picked up by the Boston newspaper, and after that, everything changed. Before this, they explicitly requested that their story not be widely publicized. They wanted to live their life as if the sightings had not happened.
Right.
They weren't like some people, like, they were like, oh, I've been abducted by aliens. Now I'm going to write a book and make a ton of money from it. It wasn't anything like that. They did not want anyone to know. They wanted only like researchers and stuff of that nature. Like they only wanted to share things with them. And they
Don't
wanted
blame
to,
them at all.
yeah, they wanted to continue living their lives like it didn't happen. But unfortunately, their story became public several years later. Again, with the thing about the Boston newspaper, their story became public several years later when this confidence was broken by a reporter who, against the Hill's wishes, published a major article in the Boston Traveler. And there was also another story in the Boston newspaper. So there was a best-selling novel called The Interrupted Journey, which I tried to get, and I did not have time to read it or order it. So there's also a movie with James Earl Jones called The UFO Incident, which I'm sorry, but a little shade to the director of that film, Richard Kalla. That's a real original name. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So they overnight became celebrity abductees. They weren't the first people to be abducted or to even report an abduction, but their story was so crazy and so in depth that it like immediately caught attention to not only a nationwide audience, but also globally, and it was widely publicized. Their story actually kind of became the blueprint of what we expect from an alien abduction, like all the details, everything of that nature.
Everything when it comes to the UFO stuff, the size and shape of the saucer, the gray people. I mean, the uniforms. That's a little different, but I mean,
but
telepathy. I mean, it's got everything.
They're not the first people to report that the aliens had uniforms on either. So, but
just can't get past the uniforms.
I know. Well, they can't be naked. Come on, that's indecent.
It's just unheard of.
Right. That's just a lawsuit waiting to happen if they're naked. So pretty much this became blueprint. This became fact among that community. And from then on, now we know of a specific type of alien, the gray, which has been in so many different people's abduction stories. Mm-hmm. So now we're on to some theories. So why do intelligent, otherwise mentally stable people come forward with these experiences? So many psychologists say sleep paralysis and hallucinations played a role.
Well, I mean, it would somewhat make sense because, I mean, he seemed to have been aware of himself but couldn't move.
But they were wide awake. That's the problem with this.
I understand that, but I mean, I can see where they're coming from with that theory because of how terrified he was because he couldn't move.
Yes. So that I do understand, but again,
and then they black out though. They blacked out.
But then the problem with this is they were wide awake. So it's not like they had woke up and then they're like, oh shit, I can't move. And then of course with regular sleep paralysis, they see like a demon in the corner or something like that. They were wide awake. They knew what was going on. They were very aware. As far as hallucinations go, I don't think they were on drugs. But
I mean, it's the 60s though. You don't know.
True. So another theory is leading questions during hypnosis. So they kind of treat this as kind of like leading questions during like a police interrogation,
right?
Kind of, saying that because hypnosis is the main way that abductees unlock their stories, that this could have been a factor because some studies have been done to where some people will actually make up a story during hypnosis. So something that never happened. If you hear some meows, that's Paige's cat.
Being a dick.
He's happy. So they're saying that some people that go under hypnosis can create these wild stories in their head, and when they wake up, they think that they're gospel, that they're like completely true. even though, oh, that's something that never happened. That's something that I planted in your mind during hypnosis, kind of thing. So there's that whole story, but I'm not saying that that's not possible in this story, but the person that they went to, Dr. Simon, he had done countless hypnosis techniques before with his patients.
Mhm.
I mean, from the interview that I heard with Barney, because I mainly heard Dr. Simon with Barney, the way that I saw him, if you want to say that he was leading, the only way that I kind of saw him leading Barney was try and get him out of that like hysterical state that he was in.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
he
you
was-
didn't hear much of like a story coming from the doctor.
No, that's kind of not, that's not really what I heard. I heard him more of just as soon as Barney starts becoming hysterical, he tries to like
Calm him down.
yeah, he tries to tether him back to the story that he's trying to tell. Is kind of how I saw it, but I mean, who knows? You can form your own opinion. So, according to research, and they actually did research on this, one of the strongest predictors of false recall is a vivid imagination.
I mean, yeah.
So, this person that would make up a story under hypnosis, they say is more likely to believe in ghosts and tarot readings. So that's also a theory, or that goes along with the theory of the
leading
making up
hypnosis.
like the false recall. Yeah. So some simply say that they made up the story, that it's that's just a myth. But in 1964, they thought that along with them making up the story, this honestly, it makes sense but pisses me off at the same time. So many point to the fact that they were an interracial couple living there was time of civil unrest at the moment. There's Cold War issues arising. Not very long ago, we just got out of Korea, that sort of thing. So they were an interracial couple living in a predominantly white state in a very turbulent era. And around that time, there were many riots erupting because of, again, the civil rights movement.
Right.
So this is a quote from a psychologist whose name I didn't even bother getting because, again, it kind of pissed me off. He says, quote, "You have a biracial couple at a time where obviously it was not easy to be a biracial couple. Look at what those aliens were. A mixture of black and white. I find that very meaningful." End quote. Yeah, you see why it pissed me off?
Okay. The mixture of black and white. I don't know.
They do realize that humans are not actually the color white and the color black, correct?
I mean,
we're actually a bunch of neutral colors.
Right.
Yeah, so
okay.
So again, that kind of pissed me off.
I'm not a fan of that.
I was like, okay, yeah. Didn't like it. I didn't like that at all. I find that to be a very easy thing to go at.
And kind of an insult to them, if you want to be completely honest. That's just an insult. Like they see people that may have attacked them or whatever, if that's what he's insinuating. A mix of black and white. First of all, there wouldn't have been a mix of black and white people attacking them. It would have been one or the other, you would think.
So they're saying that they made up this story to be like, look at these people. They were a mix of both of us. Wow. Meaning. So they're saying that they made up this story because of these reasons. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's making them look that makes them look shitty.
See, I mean, aliens is what they would have come up with.
Right, exactly.
For a story.
Exactly.
I mean, if they're wanting to gain attention or, whatever, I mean, whatever they were trying to do, like aliens is the first thing that they come up with.
Exactly. So I was like, really? Two people that are fighting for civil rights, for equality, and to get attention and to fight for their cause, they're like, hey, we were abducted by gray aliens. That makes all the sense.
Because that would be the first thing I would think of.
Me too. Me too. If I'm trying to get a pay raise, I always say that I was visited by a Yeti. Hello. That's kind of the same thing. I'm just being crude and rude. And again, I didn't even really find this guy's name because it pissed me off and I didn't feel it was necessary.
Yeah,
I just wanted to share his ridiculous theory. Okay. So either way, these accounts of alien abductions actually have helped psychologists with understanding how the brain works. So they've done a lot of studies, a lot of research on this, interviewed countless people that have had claims of being abducted or claims of even seeing aliens, that sort of thing. So it actually has helped science. So NICAP actually thought their story was credible, which is the organization that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
While again, the Air Force's Project Blue Book was like, no, that's natural causes. It was Jupiter. So they always stuck by their stories despite the criticism. And Betty even claimed that she had been visited multiple times since that occurrence.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So she became a very avid speaker in terms of anything UFO and paranormal after this experience. And again, the niece that wrote the book on them claims that she was also visited by aliens, but I don't know.
So in her home or in her car? Is
in
it
her home.
The same? Huh.
Yeah, she's like, they came to me one night. And I was like, okay, Kathleen. So not to disrespect, but I was like, okay. Yeah, under the documentary that I saw, she was talking about her aunt and uncle, then suddenly she started talking about herself, and I was like, take a seat, Kathleen. So
the niece was visited.
The niece was visited. So she said
Betty.
They both were, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
okay.
To end this, Betty's dress with the pink powder. So some sources that I found, and I do remember this specifically, I didn't find it now, but years ago, I actually watched something on, it was a History Channel. This is why I've always remembered this story. They did tests on her dress. I don't exactly know what tests they did. I'm not a science guy. I've said it time and time again. So they did a lot of tests on her dress and found a lot of properties, because there's a few stains on it too.
Mm-hmm.
In the particular stains, they found properties from this planet and then properties not from this universe.
Oh.
Universe is not the word I'm looking for, or galaxy, not from this planet. Basically.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, also, I'm sure there's not enough left of it, or I'm sure there's nothing left of it.
However, I will say, to really end this, Betty's dress is on display at the New Hampshire University, her alma mater, where it remains today.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's also on display with a few there's a few drawings, like a weird little molding of an alien head. So, and there's a picture of the two of them by the trunk of their car next to the marks.
So I'm wondering though, if it's back in 1961 when they did the tests originally, if it was maybe substances that just hadn't been discovered yet.
See, I don't think so, because I think the tests that they did were rather recent, within the last, I think it was 10 years.
Okay.
Maybe 15 years. I'm not 100% sure. But again, I'll have to do more research on it, because what I could find now was mainly hey, they claimed they were abducted by aliens, is basically what I could find right now. So
right.
I tried to do a little bit more, but again, I couldn't even get my hands on those freaking books, and I'm a little salty about that. But so yeah. So that is the story of Betty and Barney Hill's abduction.
I want those binoculars.
Right?
That's what I've taken from this.
Those got to be some military grade shit. If he can...
Grade A binoculars.
Yeah. So thoughts?
Yeah, if you want to chime in on what your theories are too. Feel free to comment, message us.
I was asking you what you thought, actually.
Oh, okay. So
Also, everyone else, like, tell us what you think.
yeah, we'd love to know.
Yeah.
As far as I don't know, I think it is strange though that she was able to come up with whatever the stars and everything. But I mean, that could maybe be argued that she could have seen that beforehand,
Yeah,
type of
there's a
thing. There's so
possibility.
many. The problem is there's so many things that can be argued from stories like this. Unfortunately, I would hope that somebody wouldn't want to just like come out with this, but you know, people are weird. But
And again, as far as making this claim to help their stance on civil rights issues,
that is a load of garbage.
yes, that honestly, when I read that, it pissed me off. And I was like, well, now I'm going to bed because now I'm pissed.
Yeah, no, I fully do not believe that at all. I think that's just crazy because these people didn't seem like they were crazy people.
No,
they seem like they were level-headed.
By
and
everyone that knew them or came into contact with them said that they were normal people. They were credible. They seemed mentally stable in every sense of the word. And there was also a lot of, and again, as to why this case kind of puts the blueprint down and makes psychologists understand whether this actually happened or not, it's real for them.
Right.
Whatever you believe, it was real to them.
Right.
So because this has helped so many psychologists, they did a lot of studies, like, you know, Barney had some trauma in the war. They were an interracial couple. It was a stressful time.
Yeah.
So it could be a number of things. I'm not saying that one of them is correct, but this kind of stuff helped them understand brains a little bit more in that regard, as to if it was a traumatic break, here's reasons why it would have happened.
That's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't really get too terribly into it because it, like, the research that I found, like, it did go a little in depth as to, like, Barney's background, as to why he would have this experience if it was a break, I guess. And as to why, like, Betty would have these experiences, as to, like, what happened in her past to make her. But I also do find it whether it was a quote unquote psychotic break or not, I do find it credible to them, as to they had about the same story.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And it varied when they were separated in the ship, according to them. So that's where their story varies.
Was different because according to them, they were separated.
They were separated
on the ship. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, especially the people that are adamant about it and actually stick by what they said they saw or felt or experienced. It's super interesting.
Yeah, and until the day that they passed away, they said, this is what happened. This is what happened to me. This did happen. So
wouldn't it be terrifying though if you somehow, for some reason, blacked out on the side of the road, and then when you came to, you were home?
They weren't home. They didn't wake up home.
But they were on the road though, right?
Yeah, they woke up 2 hours later, 35 miles down the road.
Yeah, that's 2 hours, 35 miles.
Yeah. First of all, that would be horrifying if I suddenly woke up and was driving.
Right? I mean,
I'd be like, how did I not die?
Exactly. Well, and like I said, 2 hours, 35 miles. That's a long time for 35 miles, even in a vehicle, unless, I mean, their vehicle could only go 20 miles an hour.
Well, no, I don't think so.
Exactly. It's the 60s. They had some decent vehicles then.
Exactly, because when you think about it, I'm like, 35 miles, that's not far.
No, it's
really not. So yeah, so that is the story of Betty and Barney Hill. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Isn't Betty and Barney Rubble? Isn't that Flintstones? No. Barney Rubble was who was his wife? It was Betty, right?
I don't even remember.
I mean, it's not like I watched the show a lot, but I just every
Well,
time you said
exactly.
Betty and
We
Barney,
didn't really
I thought
watch that a
Rubble.
lot.
I just was thinking Betty and Barney Rubble. So I thought that's what her name was.
That's
I don't know.
yes, the prehistoric cartoon characters were abducted by aliens. So
don't
yeah.
know.
So that concludes episode number 3.
Yay.
Yay. Did you hear me? Did you hear my voice go?
Anyway.
Alrighty. So next week will be a Paige episode.
Yeah, I'm going to have a few different topics smushed into one episode because they're not really long enough for one whole episode. So you'll get a few things.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
So did you like my subject matter?
Yes. All things weird. We love all of that.
Of course. Yes.
You know.
We'll be getting all of it.
All of it.
Yes. And I also love that a few of our friends have suggested things to cover for us.
Yes.
Which also makes our job easier.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Because then we don't have to like sit and brainstorm what to cover. We can just be like, all right, here it is. Let's do some research on it.
All righty. So thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. This episode will be out. Let me look at my calendar because I don't keep track of my days. This episode will be out the 27th.
So hopefully you're listening to it on that day.
We don't know your schedule. So, so we will see you next time. And I will be getting an intro and an outro song soon. Hopefully. We'll see. I don't know. So,
Eventually
we'll
have one.
Yes. Follow us on Facebook at
2K Away
and on Instagram at 2K Away Podcast. And with our Facebook, and I think I put it on my Instagram too, we do have a website. Technically, I guess.
Kind of.
It's kind of a website. If you go to it, because we're so new and so tiny right now, if you search for us on any major platform or even the smaller platforms, if you search for us, you won't find us. So if you go to our website, which the links will be in the Facebook, and I'll actually put it in the show notes as well. But if you go to it, what will pop up is all the links to all the different podcast apps that we will be on. So go to that, click on a link. It'll take you to wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can just go straight to our page and start listening there. Or you can listen to it on the website. It's whatever you want.
However you want to do it.
However.
YouTube as well.
Oh, yes, we are on YouTube. And hopefully I will get you some actual visuals instead of just a picture, because Paige says a lot of ums and and it's a lot of but it's like a big breath and then so it's like a
well, I'm working on it.
Yeah, so I had to edit a lot of those out, and it was so choppy that I was like, I'm not going to be able to do an actual visual with this episode at all. So hopefully in the future we will be getting some of those up. We'll see. Or if we look like crap, we're not going to do a visual. Because in the coming week, again, we're recording this on the 13th. I'll be getting my wisdom teeth out next week.
That should be fun.
Yes. So I'm going to look real sad. And good thing that's Paige's episode. So I'm just going to be a lot of So we will see you in the next one.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.